So I want to talk about something that I think you probably all do your share of thinking about, and it's not going to feel like a surprise. But I want to just spend a little time on being and doing. And the reason that being and doing is so important is that I think for most of us, we don't realize how often we are doing without making sure that our being is attached. And in some cases, I think that we find our being self sometimes a drag. So why bring it along? Because it'll just get in the way of the doing, right? And of course, the mind loves that. It's kind of like, right, let's do tangible things, just put them on the list and take care of them. And I noticed today in the survey that one of the top shoulds was I should be more productive. Well, isn't that fascinating? So we're busy doing all the time, not really connected to being, and yet we still come up with the idea that we should be more productive. Which is doing. So I'm wondering about this. It's kind of like when you eat sugar, and it seems like the more you eat sugar, the more hungry you are, and that you keep looking for something else that's more nourishing. I think that's what happens with doing without being. I think all that doing is not nourishing. It certainly might validate, like a lot of that doing might go into you feeling more valuable, right? Or more acceptable, right? But I think that's the places it goes into that are the places that are that false idea of being valuable and acceptable, not the really deep, nourishing part, which says I don't have to do anything to be acceptable and valuable. I don't have to do anything. Right? So if you take the case that our doing by itself is unnourishing and depleting, and it's only filling up a bucket that shouldn't be filled up anyway, well, then why wouldn't we feel so completely compelled to never do doing without being? Well, because it's work. It's work. You have to gain these skills, these self-development skills that help you pay attention to yourself while still functioning, while still being able to do things. And I'm going to say to you that one of those key skills is to be able to communicate about what's going on as you're doing it. And you also, if you're going to attach being to all doing, then you're generating a large amount of self-information, and you have to have vehicles to kind of move that self-information into new territory that's not bogged down in your body. So part of the reason I think we don't want to attach being to doing is we don't want to do the work that it takes to actually take care of ourselves as we're connecting with that more self-information. And of course, when I say we don't want to, I think we don't know how either, right? Because I think it just looks like, oh, I'll sit down and journal because it makes me feel good. Well, no, that's the entire mechanism, right? That goes into how do I live a life where everything I do, I have being attached to it. I remember hearing a woman years ago who was going to run a marathon, and she was describing that she ate chicken every morning because that chicken, was protein, and that was what got her body ready to run this marathon. And at the time, I just thought, oh, that sounds fun. I want to run a marathon, but it has stuck with me over the years, and I guess it stuck with me because I realized that if I want to live a life that is more fulfilling, more substantive, and really nurturing to my deepest whole self, then that means I have to put in play the practices that take care of what shows up out of being and doing, being together, right? And of course, the other really cool part about being and doing is that I get to be more honest with myself. So why am I really doing what I'm doing? There it is. You see, the mind wants to just get what it needs by going externally first and giving something to itself, right? It's the idea of I do this, then I'm going to get that. It wants that tight equation of 1 + 1 = 2. But in being world, we have all kinds of reasons for doing what we're doing. And many of them are not just the idea of on that positive side, the loving side, the good side. We have very real reasons, like I don't want to feel bad about myself. That's why I'm going to do this. I don't want you to think that I'm X, and that's why I'm doing this. So when we start attaching being to doing, our motives become important. And then when our motives become important, we start seeing them more honestly. Then we have to, again, practice that skill of not judging at that point, but to accept and love and appreciate what we see and empathize. So this idea that we would go through life where we want to attach being to doing, what it also does is it will have us question why we're doing what we're doing, like why we're doing it, not like our even motive. Like, are you kidding? I've done that 27 times. Why would I do it 28 times? Right? Like the logic of it, like the repetitive nature of life, all of a sudden, when we attach being and doing, we're like, I'm not doing that anymore. We start rebelling, right? We rebel because we realize that there's this repetitive mechanism that continues to go and go and go, that it really lost interest long ago, but we do it because we think we're supposed to, or worse yet, have to. Worse yet, have to. So the idea of attaching being and doing, the other thing is that it does is it gives us added purpose. So I personally hate mundane things. I really don't like doing the dishes. And I don't like anything that's really repetitive over and over and over. And so when I attach being to doing, though, I recognize that there's something that's really important to my own growing edge, that the more I do that, the more I work with that, the more I do these mundane things, there's emotion that comes up. I remember I talked about baklava in one of those other videos, and now we're the layer on top of the layer on top of the layer. When I do mundane things, my layers are shaken up, right? I can feel them. And so then inside of it, it's like, okay, now I'm going to bring new being here. So you can see why this flashlight on the self is so important, because when you're doing and the being starts happening, you don't really know. You're in a territory of like listening for that which you don't know, or that which you don't already like have connected with. And then as you're in that territory of listening and it bubbles up and it comes up, now you need these skills about how to love yourself and relate to yourself in a way that encourages safe space and the sharing of the inner self, right? It really, all of it happens right here in being and doing. And the ultimate outcome is that you have a more available information to choose your path in life. You have more available information to think about, what do I want to be responsible for? Like, what do I want to cause in my life? And you have the ability to say no, thank you, because you're not now compelled to just keep doing without being conscious of what's happening at a being level. So you can actually move in a different direction than the one you're moving in. Many of you talk about, I'd like to be in a new place, right? I'd like to have something different. Well, I've got to say that you start attaching being to doing, and that new different place will become more likely to be part of your reality. Okay. All right. I do love that subject, that being doing thing. It's one of my favorites.